The night of my prom was supposed to be the happiest night of my high school life. I had worked part-time jobs after school for months, saving every dollar to buy the perfect dress. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, a soft blue gown with silver detailing that shimmered under the light. I'd hidden it in my closet, wrapped carefully in plastic so no one would ruin it. My sister, Mia, had always been jealous of the attention I sometimes got from our parents, especially when it came to achievements. I never tried to outshine her, but somehow, she always saw me as competition. That night, her jealousy turned into something cruel. When I came home from the salon, excited and nervous, the smell hit me before I even opened my bedroom door. It was acrid, smoky, and wrong. My heart dropped into my stomach. My dress, the one I had dreamed of wearing, was in ashes on the floor. The carpet was charred, and the air was thick with burnt fabric. I froze. My hands trembled as I stepped closer, unable to believe it. Mia stood near the window, holding a lighter, a twisted smile on her face. "You think you're better than me," she spat. "Let's see who's laughing now." Something inside me broke that moment. I screamed, not out of anger but heartbreak. The dress wasn't just a piece of fabric, it represented everything I had fought for, my independence, my small triumphs, my effort to be seen. I turned to run out, but she shoved me back, and in the struggle, the lighter flicked again. The flame grazed my arm before I managed to push her away. The pain was instant and searing, but worse than the burn was the betrayal. I cried out for help, and our parents came running. But instead of comfort, I got judgment. My father took one look at the scene, the half-burned carpet, the lighter, the smell, and glared at me as if I were the villain. "What did you do now?" he yelled. "Always causing trouble, aren't you? You're nothing but a disappointment." I couldn't believe my ears. "Dad, she did this. She burned my dress. I pointed at Mia, who was already sobbing fake tears. "She's lying," she shouted. She was mad I was going to the party too. She started it. And just like that, my parents believed her. My mother grabbed my arm, ignoring the burn that was beginning to blister. "You've embarrassed this family enough. Get out of my house," she shouted, her face twisted in rage. I stood there, numb, shaking, waiting for someone to see the truth, but no one did. My father's voice was cold. "You're trash," he said, turning away. Those words hit harder than the flame ever could. I packed a small bag, still crying, still in shock, and left. The night was cold and rainy. I had nowhere to go, so I sat on the curb outside our house, watching the water wash over the ashes of what used to be my dream. I thought about all the times I had done chores for them without being asked, how I'd taken care of Mia when she was sick, how I'd given up outings with friends to babysit for free. None of it mattered now. To them, I was nothing but a burden. That night, I ended up at an old bus stop. The rain seeped through my clothes, and my arm throbbed with pain. I wanted to hate them, but mostly, I felt empty. I cried until I fell asleep sitting up, clutching my small bag, shivering in the dark. The next morning, I went to school, wearing a sweatshirt and jeans instead of a gown. My friends noticed the red mark on my arm, the emptiness in my eyes, but I told them I was fine. I stayed at a friend's house that week, doing everything I could to avoid going back home. Days turned into weeks. My parents didn't call. They didn't even check if I was alive. I found a job at a diner, working long shifts while finishing my classes. The burn eventually healed, but the scar stayed, a constant reminder of that night and everything it took from me. I graduated without them there. When my name was called, I looked out into the crowd, hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd show up. But the seats where they should have been were empty. Still, I kept going. I put myself through college with scholarships and late-night shifts. I promised myself I'd never need them again. Every time I felt weak, I remembered my father's words, "You're trash," and used them as fuel to prove him wrong. It wasn't easy, but little by little, I built my own life from the ashes, just like that burned dress. Years had passed since that night when my family turned their backs on me. The memory of standing in the rain, watching my dream burn into ashes, used to haunt me, but now it only reminded me of how far I had come. I had built a life from nothing, piece by piece, without their help, without their love, and without their approval. I was no longer the scared, heartbroken girl they had thrown out. I had become a woman who knew her worth, and I had turned every insult and every wound into a stepping stone toward success. After years of working 2 jobs and studying at night, I earned my business degree and opened a small boutique. It started as a single rented room with 2 sewing machines and a dream. I poured every ounce of effort and creativity into it, designing clothes that told stories of strength, pain, and rebirth. People loved them because they were real. My designs carried emotion, something raw and human that touched hearts. Slowly, the boutique became a brand, and the brand became a company. I hired staff, expanded locations, and soon found myself being interviewed on TV as a self-made entrepreneur. The same girl once called trash was now running a successful fashion house, her name on the lips of people who once would have ignored her. Then one morning, I received an email from a real estate agency. The old neighborhood was being developed, and our former family house was listed for sale. Out of curiosity, I decided to visit. The memories rushed back the moment I turned onto the familiar street, the cracked sidewalk, the maple tree I used to climb, the porch where I once cried as a teenager. I stood outside the house for a long moment, feeling everything and nothing at once. The "for sale" sign seemed to wave at me like an invitation from fate. Without hesitation, I made an offer and bought it in full cash. Months later, I moved back, not as the rejected daughter, but as the owner. The house had aged, but so had I. I renovated it, giving it warmth and beauty, turning it into a place of peace rather than pain. I didn't tell anyone, not even my friends, what that house meant to me. I wanted it to be my quiet victory. But life, as always, had its own plans. One evening, I received a message from a mutual acquaintance. My parents and sister had fallen on hard times. Dad had lost his job, Mom was struggling with health bills, and Mia's marriage had collapsed. They were looking for a place to stay temporarily. Ironically, the only available property within their means was the very house I now owned. When they contacted the listing agent, they had no idea who the landlord was. The irony of it all made me laugh quietly to myself. I agreed to meet them, but not as the broken girl they once knew. When the day came, I arrived early, waiting in the living room. My parents and sister walked in, their eyes filled with exhaustion and humility I had never seen before. Mom looked older, her hair grayer, her once sharp tone softened by years of regret. Dad looked thinner, his confidence gone. Mia couldn't even meet my eyes at first. They froze when they realized who I was. You own this place." Dad stammered. I nodded, keeping my expression calm. "Yes, I bought it a while ago." The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. My mother's lips trembled. "We didn't know, sweetheart. We didn't." I held up my hand gently. "It's fine. You didn't care to know anything about me for years. Why start now?" They looked ashamed, and for once, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt detached, like I was watching strangers who used to play the role of family. Mia finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for what I did. I don't know what came over me that night." I looked at her, seeing not the cruel sister who burned my dress, but a broken woman who had burned her own bridges. "You hurt me," I said quietly, "but I've healed. The scar is still there, but it doesn't define me anymore." Dad swallowed hard, his pride dissolving. "We've lost everything," he said. "We have nowhere to go. Can we stay here for a while?" The old me might have said yes out of guilt or longing, but the woman I had become had learned the value of boundaries. I smiled politely. "This house isn't for rent anymore. I'm turning it into a design studio." I handed them a card with a bank contact. "But I can help you find a place. I'll even cover your deposit for a small apartment." They didn't argue. They knew they had no right to. When they left, Mom turned back one last time and said, "We were wrong about you. You were never trash." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My success, my peace, and the life I had built were already answers. After they left, I stood in the quiet house and looked around. The same walls that once echoed with my tears now glowed with sunlight. The same floor where my burned dress had turned to ashes was now covered in polished wood. I had reclaimed everything they tried to take from me, not out of revenge, but out of resilience.